Today, when someone hears the word serial killer, they imagine something modern. Police tape, news cameras, courtrooms, DNA evidence, documentaries, mugshots, a quiet neighbor with a hidden life. It feels like something that belongs to cities, highways, suburbs, and not the modern world. The human brain is much older than the modern world. The same species that built cities once slept beside fires. The same species that created laws once lived without police. The same species that studies killers today once had to survive dangerous people with nothing but the group. So here's the uncomfortable question. Did ancient humans have serial killers? The obvious answer is no. How could they? There was no cities, no strangers to disappear, no police records, no newspapers, no criminal profiles, no word for serial killer after all, but that does not mean the behavior was impossible, because murder is ancient, violence is ancient, cruelty is ancient. The human capacity to harm another person did not begin with civilization. What changed was the world around it. A serial killer is a modern category. It required repeated killing, usually separated by time, often with a psychological pattern. Ancient humans would not have used that language. They would not have thought in terms of diagnosis, forensics, or criminal psychology, but they would absolutely have understood something simpler. This person is dangerous. This person keeps hurting people. This person cannot be trusted near the group. And in a small ancient band, that problem would have been terrifying. Because before prisons, before courts, before written laws, before police, a group had to answer to one question on its own. What do you do with someone who might kill again? To understand this, you have to understand ancient life without anonymity. Today, a person can disappear into a city, they can move through crowds, they can hide behind normal routines, they can live around strangers who did not know their past, but ancient humans mostly lived in small groups. Everyone knew everyone. Everyone noticed moods, conflicts, jealousies, injuries, missing tools, missing food, missing people. There was no private life in the modern sense. If someone acted strangely, people noticed. If someone became violent, people remembered. If someone disappeared after an argument, the group would ask questions. A small tribe was not just a community, it was a surveillance system made of memory. That means repeated killing would have been much harder to hide. Not impossible, but harder. There were no alleys full of strangers, no highways, no isolated apartments, no digital double life. If someone in a small group kept being connected to death, eventually the pattern would become impossible to ignore. And that may be the biggest difference between ancient killers and modern ones. Civilization did not invent dangerous people, it may have invented better hiding places, but ancient life has its own dangers. There were moments when people were alone, hunting, gathering, scouting, walking between camps, sleeping away from the main group. Conflict could happen in silence. A body could be hidden by landscape, animals, water, or time, and without forensic science, a death could be misunderstood. Was it an animal? A fall? Another group? An accident? Or someone inside the camp? Ancient humans did not have laboratories, but they had observation. They knew tracks, they knew wounds, they knew behavior, they knew who lied, they knew who had enemies, they knew who returned nervous, they knew when a story sounded wrong. And because survival depended on reading the world, they may have been much better at noticing small signs than we are today. Still, there is a problem. We cannot dig up a skeleton and say, this person was killed by a serial killer. Bones can show violence, they can show trauma, they could show weapons, they could show that someone died badly, but bones do not usually show motive. They do not tell us whether the killer was one person, a rival group, a family member, or a repeated predator. So the honest answer is this. We do not know if ancient humans had serial killers in the modern sense, but we do know that they had murder. We do know that they had interpersonal violence, and we do know that they had to manage dangerous people without modern institutions. Sites like Nataruk in Kenya show evidence of violent death among prehistoric hunter-gatherers. This was 10,000 years ago, including men, women, and children. Jebel Sahaba, which is a cemetery in the Nile Valley, contains remains with evidence of repeated violent trauma from the late Pleistocene, showing that human violence reaches deep into prehistory. Those sites are not evidence of serial killers, they are more often discussed as conflict, massacre, or repeated violence between groups, but they prove something important. Ancient humans were not peaceful cartoons. They were human. They loved, they shared, they protected children, they made art, they cared for the injured, and they also fought, killed, and feared each other. The question is not whether ancient humans were capable of murder, they were. The question is what happened when murder came from inside the group, because for a small band, an internal killer would be worse than an outside enemy. An outside enemy can be watched for, a predator can be tracked, a storm can be prepared for, but a dangerous person inside the group sleeps near the fire, shares the same food, knows the children, knows the paths, knows when people are alone. That kind of danger attacks trust itself. And trust was one of the most important tools ancient humans had. A small group cannot survive if everyone is constantly afraid of everyone else. People need to share food, sleep near each other, raise children together, warn each other, defend each other, teach each other. If one person breaks that trust badly enough, the entire group is threatened. So what do? Probably not just one thing. Different groups, different environments, and different situations would lead to different answers. Maybe warning, maybe public confrontation, maybe shame, maybe forced distance, maybe exile, maybe revenge, maybe execution. That sounds harsh, but in a world without prisons, the options were limited. If someone was truly dangerous, you could not lock them away for life. You could not call authorities, you could not send them to a hospital. You either kept living with them, pushed them away, or killed them. Anthropologist Christopher Boehm argued that hunter-gatherer punishment could include severe sanctions for people who threatened group stability, including violent or malicious individuals. This is where ancient justice begins to look different from modern justice. Modern justice asks what law was broken. Ancient survival may have asked, can we keep this person near us and still survive? That is a much older question, and it may explain why human groups became so sensitive to people who were violent, dominating, reckless, or impossible to trust. The group had to protect itself, not because they had a written moral philosophy, but because cooperation was life. A person who constantly stole food could weaken the group. A person who betrayed the group could get others killed. A person who used violence without control could destroy the trust that made the group function. And a person who killed repeatedly would become the ultimate threat. But there's another strange possibility. Some dangerous behavior may not have been understood as evil in the modern sense. Humans did not have psychiatry. They did not have words like psychopathy, antisocial personality, trauma response, paranoia, or delusion. They explained people through the words they knew: spirits, curses, taboos, bad magic, angry ancestors, broken social bonds. A person who acted violently or unpredictably might have been seen as possessed, poisoned, cursed, or spiritually dangerous. That does not mean ancient people were foolish. They were trying to explain behavior with the tools their culture gave them, and sometimes those explanations may have shaped what happened next. A dangerous person might be feared not just as a person, but as a threat from the invisible world. That could make the group more likely to isolate them, expel them, or kill them on the spot. But it could also make some unusual people seem powerful, because ancient societies did not always treat abnormal behavior the same way we do. A person who heard voices, saw visions, or acted strangely might be feared in one situation and seen as spiritually important in another. The line between madness, danger, and sacred power was not always clear, but repeated killing would be different, because whatever explanation the group used, the practical problem remained. People were dying. Someone had to stop it. This is where the idea of ancient serial killers becomes less like a crime documentary and more like a question about society. How do humans protect the group from the humans inside it? That question still exists today. We have police, courts, prisons, therapy, databases, and investigations. Ancient humans had reputation, memory, group decision, and immediate consequences. In some ways, that made them more vulnerable. In other ways, it made them harder to fool. A modern killer can hide behind distance. An ancient killer had to hide inside a group that watched everything. But there's a darker side. If the group got it wrong, there was no appeal, no evidence review, no defense attorney, no forensic test. A rumor could become a death sentence. Fear could become punishment. A strange person could be blamed for something they did not do. Ancient justice may have protected groups, but it also could be brutal. Because when survival is on the line, people may choose certainty even when they do not have proof. That is the cost of living without institutions. The group becomes the law, and the law becomes whatever the group believes it needs to survive. So did ancient humans have serial killers? Maybe. Almost certainly they had individuals who were unusually violent, dangerous, or predatory. Almost certainly, some people killed more than once. Whether they fit the modern idea of a serial killer is impossible to know. The evidence does not preserve that kind of story. No confession, no victim pattern, no investigation file, no name, no bones, wounds, tools, and silence. But the deeper answer might be more disturbing. The ingredients were always there. The human mind was there. Violence was there, jealousy was there, revenge was there, cruelty was there, fear was there, desire for power was there, and the ability to deceive was still there as well. The only thing missing was the modern world that lets some people hide longer. Ancient humans may not have had serial killers in the way that we imagine them now. They had the ancient version of the same nightmare. A person inside the circle who made the circle unsafe, and when that happened, the group had to choose risk mercy or choose survival, keep the person close or push them into the dark, try to understand them or remove them. There was no perfect answers, only consequences. Maybe that is why humans became so obsessed with stories about dangerous people. The murderer, the traitor, the monster in human form, the person who looks like us but cannot be trusted like us. Those stories are old because the fear is old. Long before true crime, long before horror movies, long before police sketches, there was the campfire, and around that fire, people would have warned each other about predators outside the light. And maybe sometimes the scariest story was about someone inside it. Because for most of human history, survival did not only mean watching the forest, it meant watching each other, and maybe civilization did not create the serial killer, maybe it just gave the oldest human fear a new name.